This presentation is going to discuss things that a presenter should keep in mind when preparing learning for adult learners. The first one is 5 key characteristics of the adult learner that you need to keep in mind when you're designing PD. The first thing is that adults are driven by their own fully formed self-concept. So this means they know who they are. Professionally, they know who they are personally. They manage a busy personal and professional calendars, and they'll have a concept of what they need to learn. Secondly, adults are bringing vast quantities of life and professional experience to any learning experience. In line with the constructivist theory of learning, the starting point for any new learning for the adult learner is past and professional and personal experiences. Third, because adults have a clear self-concept professionally and personally, they have an eagerness to learn anything that is going to improve either aspect of their life. When adults see something that is going to help them, they can be very focused on learning it for the practical benefits it will bring them. Fourth, their orientation to learning. When adults learn, they expect to apply the learning immediately, not in an imagined, hypothetical, distant future. Lastly, adults are highly motivated to learn and thus have a sense of urgency about it. If something is connected to a goal that the adult has, they will want to learn it. The transformational, all right. The transformational learning theory of Jack Meserow can answer the question of why it's important to keep in mind the principles of adult learning when making learning experiences for adult. The instructionaldesign.org quotes Meserow and describes this learning theory as constructivist, meaning it's an orientation which holds that the way learners interpret and reinterpret their sense experience is central to making meaning and hence learning. For adult learning to work, it needs to be instrumental and communicative. The instrumental aspect of transformational learning tells the presenter that adult learning needs to be problem-oriented. This concept is also reflected in Knowles's assumption about adult learners. Adults want to solve their problems. Next, the communicative aspect of transformational learning tells us that learning needs to be personal and adapted to any cultural or emotional differences for the learners, which we're going to address in a later slide. Without these considerations, learning won't happen, and the presenter will have wasted her audience's time. Regarding the presentation itself, presenters need to keep in mind color, graphic, font size, and the amount of information on a slide. With graphics, visual frills are unappealing to the pragmatic adult audience. Any graphics should be purposeful, essential to the message, and created by the presenter. Color schemes should make text easy to read, and font size should be consistent and also easy to read from a distance. Regarding the amount of text, it should be minimal, no more than 5 bullet points per slide, and complete sentences should generally be avoided. The second 2 tips, drawing from experience and making learning problem-oriented, go hand in hand. Because the adult learner is drawing from a vast reservoir of professional experience, is self-directed, and has identified problems that they want to solve in their professional life, the learning needs to allow learners to focus on these things. The content of your presentation and the content of the learning must allow for your learners to draw from experience and make their learning problem-oriented. Finally, the presentation should facilitate some interactive learning activities, especially for millennials and boomers, as those generations have a greater tendency toward collaborative work over Gen Xers, who tend to be more independent. However, regardless of generation, requiring collaboration will boost learning as adult learners thrive on feedback. Lastly, one must consider bias. A presenter must keep in mind different cultural norms that might exist in their audience of adult learners. Many cultures, as investigated by Basher, have distinct nuances that truly should inform interactions with members of that culture to ensure the best interactions and learning experiences. Basher points out cultural norms that can cause very different reactions in people depending on where they're from. For example, Americans are less formal and will call each other by their first name, whereas European cultures tend to be more formal and could be put off by the familiarity. Many cultures have different norms regarding punctuality. Also, values can differ from individualistic values as Americans to very family-oriented values to community-oriented values. Taking these cultural differences into consideration when working with a culturally diverse audience can help put your audience at ease and thus be more ready to learn. And here are the references for further reading.